You didn't grow up with a savings account. You grew up counting coins before the grocery run. You knew which lights to turn off before your parents had to say it. And even now, years later, even when the money is there, something inside you never fully relaxes. That thing, it has a name. It has a science. And today, we're going to unpack every layer of it, because the psychology of people who grew up poor is one of the most fascinating, most misunderstood, and most important conversations we never have. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might be the first time someone has put into words exactly what you've been living. Here's something your school never taught you. Poverty doesn't just affect your wallet, it rewires your brain. Researchers at Harvard and Princeton discovered that financial scarcity consumes cognitive bandwidth, the same mental space you use for decision-making, emotional regulation, and long-term planning. When your mind is constantly calculating if there's enough food, enough heat, enough money, it leaves less capacity for everything else. This is called the scarcity mindset, and the brutal truth is, it doesn't disappear when the bank account grows. It becomes a lens, a default setting, a voice that whispers, "This can't last," no matter how stable life becomes. People who grew up in poverty often develop what psychologists call hypervigilance, a constant, exhausting alertness to potential threats. Not danger in the traditional sense, but financial danger, social danger, the danger of being caught without enough. You learn to read rooms, to anticipate problems before they arrived, to always have a backup plan even when nobody asked you to. That's not anxiety, that's survival intelligence. But carried into adulthood, it can feel like you're always bracing for something that never comes. Let's talk about what nobody wants to admit, the shame. Growing up poor in a world that treats wealth like a moral virtue leaves a mark that goes deeper than finances. You might have hidden where you lived, pretended you weren't hungry at a friend's birthday, felt a hot flush of embarrassment at school when a project required supplies your family couldn't afford. That shame doesn't evaporate, it attaches itself to your identity. Psychologists call this internalized classism, the belief, absorbed from the culture around you, that your worth is somehow tied to your economic status. And here's what makes it insidious. Many people who grew up poor become their harshest critics. They push themselves relentlessly, not from ambition, but from a desperate need to never return to that place. Success becomes less about joy and more about escape. The impostor syndrome that haunts high-achieving people from low-income backgrounds isn't a personality flaw. It's a logical response to being told, explicitly or quietly, that spaces like this weren't built for someone like you. Now let's get into the behaviors, because this is where people from outside often get it wrong. Why would someone who struggled financially splurge on an expensive dinner? Why would someone with debt still send money to family members who ask? Why does the person who grew up with nothing sometimes struggle to save even when they finally have the means? Because money, for people who grew up in poverty, was never just money. It was power, it was safety, it was love, the thing you gave when you wanted to show someone they mattered. It was also temporary. It left, it ran out. So spending it felt rational, because hoarding something that always disappeared felt pointless. Economists call this present bias, the tendency to overvalue immediate rewards over future ones. For people raised in scarcity, this isn't a lack of discipline, it's a deeply rational response to a world where tomorrow was never guaranteed. And the family financial pressure, that's something researchers call the family tax. When you make it out, when you climb, there's an implicit expectation to bring others with you. Saying no feels like betrayal. Saying yes can keep you from building your own foundation. It's one of the most emotionally complex tensions a person can carry. Poverty doesn't just shape how you handle money, it shapes how you handle people.
Children raised in unstable economic environments often develop what attachment theorists call an anxious or avoidant attachment style. They either cling to relationships out of fear of abandonment, or they build walls so high that closeness feels dangerous. Trust becomes complicated. You learned early that the people who were supposed to be stable sometimes weren't, that adults who promised things couldn't always deliver, that the future was unreliable. And so you either overtrust, giving people the benefit of the doubt long past when they deserve it, or you undertrust, keeping everyone at arm's length just in case. There's also something profound that happens in friendships across class lines. The person who grew up poor often feels like a translator in two worlds, never fully belonging to either. Too educated for the old neighborhood, not wealthy enough to be comfortable in the new one. Sociologists call this boundary crossing, and the invisible labor it requires is exhausting in ways that are almost impossible to explain. Here's what I want you to hear, and I mean really hear this. Growing up poor forged in you something that money cannot buy and schools cannot teach: the resourcefulness to build something from nothing, the empathy that comes from knowing what it means to struggle, the resilience that's been tested and proven, not imagined. Studies consistently show that people who overcame childhood poverty demonstrate extraordinary levels of grit, creative problem-solving, and emotional intelligence. They read people accurately, they adapt quickly, they waste nothing because they know the cost of everything. The same hypervigilance that kept you anxious also kept you sharp. The same scarcity thinking that made money complicated also made you resourceful in ways that wealthy peers have never had to be. Your background gave you a perspective that most people will spend a lifetime trying to acquire and never fully reach. The journey forward isn't about forgetting where you came from, it's about understanding it clearly enough that it stops driving the car without your permission. It's about recognizing when the scarcity voice is lying to you, when the shame isn't yours to carry, when the hypervigilance is costing you more than it's protecting you. Therapy helps, community helps, but awareness, deep, honest awareness of the invisible forces shaping your decisions, that's where it begins. If this video made you feel seen, share it with someone who needs to feel seen too. And if you want to go deeper on the psychology of money, behavior, and identity, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started.